Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, continuing the Swamp Thing read-along with Swamp Thing number 41. Swamp Thing is back in Louisiana after dealing with a threat of a werewolf in Maine. That was after a vampire threat in Illinois. He's being led across the country by John Constantine, who says there's this big evil brewing, and he needs Swamp Thing's help to stop it all. Swamp Thing is trying to kind of get away from Constantine, who's stringing him along here, but unfortunately the next threat is in his hometown of Louisiana, and we got an idea from the cover here of what that next threat is going to be. We see a voodoo doll. We got a Swamp Thing voodoo doll. I love this cover. I think this is a great cover. It's not one that I think about when I think about some of the really good covers of this run, but as I was reading this issue and was looking at it more and more, I like it. I think it's really solid. Just a note about those previous adventures of Swamp Thing. If you're not fully caught up on the series, I highly recommend you go back and watch those previous episodes, just so you have the full context of how we got to be at this point. And we begin, as we very often do, with some narration. Alan Moore loves to do it. He loves to wax poetic. And in this one, he is talking about, narrating about what do dead people think about. And we'll read it off here. What do they think about in their beds beneath the ground? What do the dead people think about? When the summer earth swelters, when roots press against their backs like creases in the bed sheets, when sleep won't come, what notions do they entertain in those frail parchment bulbs that once were skulls? The party continues overhead, with songs heard before and dances long since wearied of. Slumbering below, is it a consolation that, as with roots and trees, all things above are determined by what lies buried beneath? Dreaming amongst the foundations of the world, are they content? Do the yellowing ribs still grate together in a nostalgic parody of breath? Do the dry sockets thirst for one final glimpse of sky? Tongueless, do they fondly repeat old dialogues, headstones tilting together to share a grievance? What do they talk about in their beds beneath the ground? What do the dead people talk about? And which voices are loudest? And in the imagery, we start from a pitch black paint panel here, and it's broken up by wood that is splintering, and we get like bugs and vegetation, and that breaking continues in the next panel. And as we push out, we understand that we're beginning inside of a coffin, and then we're breaking out of that coffin, and then we're breaking the earth that's above the coffin. We're entering the graveyard, and then we're seeing this building here through this wood fence. So what's all that going to mean? We do continue the narration after that, and we get a closer up view of this building. This plantation is what we'll come to know it as, and we get dialogue that's disembodied here, and very similar to, was it issue 28 or 29? It was the second issue of the Arcane trilogy where Abby has discovered, well, she's come to a realization about how her husband Matt, has been possessed by her uncle Anton, and we get like a tour of their house that's like in disarray as we get narration over it. We get a similar sequence here where we get kind of a tour of this plantation while we have this dialogue, which again, I'll read this one out. I'll try not to just read the entire issue through, but this is actually important to know and hear for later. So the dialogue: Charlotte, you are tainted. You are repulsive to me. Do you understand? Repulsive. This thing that you have consorted with is lower than an animal. Between you, you've fouled the name of Roberta Land. You are no longer fit to bear my children. Response: Oh no, oh Wesley, please. Now, Charlotte here has often said that we're all no different beneath the skin. I propose we put that to the test. Take this creature downstairs to the cellar and flay it. Oh God, Wesley, don't. Mr. Jackson, please, Mr. Jackson, I don't mean no harm. The lady asked me in. Mrs. Jackson, tell them to let me go. Wesley, I'll do anything. Please stop it. Wesley, Wesley, you're hurting my arm. Where are you taking? You're coming to watch, Charlotte. All right? Over by that post will do fine. No, no, no. Oh God. Now, shall we begin? And we're pushing in. We're going into the basement of this plantation. We're pushing in on this post with chains around it. Now that intro is done, we're back out in the graveyard that's on the plantation property with the credits listed on it. I don't think that's the first time they've done this in this series. We got writer Alan Moore, art by Stephen Bissette on pencils, and Alfredo Alcala as the inker. So no Toddleben today, and that will be noticeable. He's got a very different inking style from Toddleben, and it's immediately on display on this page with how Swamp Thing is rendered. They have a very different approach to how they draw him. But Abby and Swamp Thing hanging out in the swamp as they do. And Swamp Thing asks her if she's noticed anything off lately just around, because Louisiana is the next clue. It's where Constantine says something is going to manifest here. And she says, no, it's actually been pretty quiet. The kids at Elysium Lawns have actually been fine. And there's a fun work situation popping up because the TV people have come, and she explains that they're filming a new soap opera at that's like a historical thing about plantations, and they're filming it at the plantation at the old Jackson house. We heard that name Jackson in the dialogue earlier, and she says here, this is Alan Moore, I guess, trying to make a point. Also, they're casting lots of local black people as slaves because outsiders don't look right. So, all these descendants of liberated slaves are earning good money by becoming slaves again. Is that funny or sad? Swamp Thing replies, it's human. Alan Moore obviously trying to say a little bit something there. I really like this moment where they're walking and she's talking about how she's going to go and she's going to head over to the set because she wants to gawk at celebrities. And then they stop talking and he helps her up. We get this separate panel within the panel where he helps her climb the tree branch. I just think that's really sweet. And then she changes the topic to how Swamp Thing is, now that he's learned how to fast travel, he leaves his old body behind, he forms a new body. Doesn't that make him feel disconnected? And he responds that he's changing, but whatever I change into, it will always love you. The disquiet that you feel is unnecessary. She says, no, it's human. So she gets to end the scene on the same way that Swamp Thing ended the scene. And then the next scene begins with that segue of it's human, because now we're at the plantation, we're on set, and these two actors are walking around and they find that post we saw earlier that still has stains all over it. And they say that they are human blood stains, they had them tested. It's all going to get cleaned up before we start shooting, but isn't that gross? This is Richard, right? Yes, Richard. And the woman is Angela. And Angela is the star of the soap opera. She is, I guess, the lady of the manor, the lady of the house. And in the show, she's going to be starting a relationship with one of the slaves on the plantation. But the actress is racist. She is very vocal about how she wishes that they would clean up some of the extras. She gets annoyed when her co-star, Billy, I believe his name is talking about his black power stuff, is the way she says it. And Richard tries to tell her, you're oversimplifying a complex political situation. And so he asks her if she's so averse to her co-star Billy, how come she signed up to a series to play in a series where she's doing love scenes opposite him? And she says basically the same reason that you signed up to be a slave boss. I'm doing it for the money. And Again, I think Alan Moore is trying to make some kind of statement here about falling back into historical roles when the price is right. I don't know that the. You tell me if you think that like this metaphor works. I think it's like decent. I think maybe it's a little bit of a stretch. Um, and it kind of continues on the next page where we've got Billy and I think his agent uh, having an argument because Billy's frustrated that he's going to have to do love scenes with this blatantly racist woman. And the agent tells him, we'll get a stand in. You don't have to touch her. Don't worry about it. And Billy says that he's doing this show because he wants to make a political statement. So the white actors are doing it for the money. The black actor is doing it because he's trying to make a political statement. But when all is said and done, these two races are falling back into the historical expectations of their race. It is for a make-believe show, though, so again, I don't know if the metaphor is perfect, but it's something. It's something interesting to kind of mull over and think about. But as he's talking, we see that the plantation is in disrepair, and on the previous page, actually, we see people working on it. There's a crew working to restore it, and around the curtains are in tatters, and they're these dark purple. And as he's talking, he turns around and suddenly he's at a loss for words because it's vibrant and it's beautiful and fixed. The curtains are yellow and bright, and the walls are the wallpaper is not peeling anymore. The paint's not chipped. And then quickly he snaps back and he's into reality. He doesn't know what's going on. His manager says, "Hey, you promised me you wouldn't do cocaine anymore. I need you focused. I need you here. You got to lay off that stuff." Next up, so it is the next day. Alan Moore does bring in these little titles here, which I tried Googling and I couldn't really find a lot of information on them. Maybe I need to do a different spelling. Like here was July 25th, the Feast of Papagao. July 26th, Mystery de Grande Sainte Anne. I don't know a lot about voodoo culture and what's like their like holidays. I don't know. If you know anything about this stuff, let me know in the comments. It seems like an interesting topic. Abby and Swamp Thing are hanging out again. Abby's going for a swim. She says, "Come on in. The water's beautiful." Swamp Thing says, "No, I thought about what you said, and I'm going to try to avoid leaving my body as often as possible. I really want to restrict it to only situations where it's absolutely necessary, because I don't want to lose that connection that you're talking about." Abby says, "Great. I actually got I got a job on that film set, just doing some gopher work, and tension is really running high on the set. There seems to be a lot of bad blood going around that place." So then we cut back to the plantation where rehearsals are underway, and there's a big fight because Billy doesn't want to say this line that he thinks is like too ridiculous because it's kind of like what people put on when they're making fun of this old kind of dialect where it's a lot of like missing consonants, and it's like I'm most powerful, sorry, Ms. Rebecca. He just says like I'm not saying that. I refuse to say that line. I'm also like, how could you expect me to say anything nice to this horrible woman? Because she says I have an idea. Why don't we keep the line and get rid of him? Because they are completely at odds with each other. And the director says, "Look, this is rehearsals. If you don't like the line, fix it. Say something else." And we get another one of those moments where things change suddenly. And now Billy, in these panels here, he's wearing, a yellow collared shirt, and now his shirt is white. And his demeanor completely changes, and he says, like completely straight, "You look beautiful." And she responds, with her line, "Those aren't the proper sentiments." He calls her Miss Charlotte. "I didn't mean to speak out of my turn. You're going to have to tell Master about this now." Uh, and the director cuts in, I love that new dialogue. We're going to try to remember it, keep that in place. But remember, Angela's character is Rebecca. Where did you get Charlotte from? And I think we got Charlotte here, didn't we? Yes, it's so we heard Charlotte again in that opening dialogue. That was disembodied voices. Richard tries to compliment Billy on his performance, and Billy isn't having it. Tells him, lay off all that my man stuff. Us, in italics, colored folk don't say that anymore. This is weird. I think what Alan Moore is probably trying to do is you're supposed to say that with like us colored folk, like as like Billy is assuming that Richard is being condescending, and so like colored folk is what he would call him, but Billy's not trying to do that. He's just trying to give him a compliment. If you don't read this correctly, it can read like Billy is like proudly calling himself that. Like I don't know. It's just the tricks of text without a voice to vocalize them. So, but I'm pretty sure that what Alan Moore was going for was being a little like facetious. We're back in the swamp, and as Swamp Thing and Abby are walking along, he finds a dying bird, and he scoops him up, and he basically places the bird inside his chest and absorbs the bird. And he explains that um, by placing it inside me, I may absorb its riches as it decays. Death shall nourish life, and nothing shall be wasted. And that theme of death nourishing life, I think, is really important to this 2-issue story arc, as we'll see as it unfolds. We're back on set, and Richard is struggling to get into character. He says that I'm having trouble here thinking like a racist. It's so difficult. And Billy comes at him like, what, you think thinking like a slave comes easier to me? Billy says, look, that's not what I meant, and you know it. Director says, drop it, you two. Let's get on with the scene. And ridiculous. We get another one of those moments where reality kind of drops, and we see one of our characters dressed completely differently and falling into a different character, where now Richard, his script is replaced with a whip. He's dressed like he's on a plantation back in the olden days, and he flips out on Billy. He whips him. He tells him it's not your place to resent anything that I do. You people are all lucky to work here at Roberta Land. And then just like that, it snaps off again. The director says, well, that was really great, but remember, Roberta Land is the actual plantation. In the show, it's called Providence. And Billy says, like, look, I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry that I hit you. Richard says that to Billy. And Billy says, what are you talking about? You didn't hit me with anything. And he's back in his normal outfit. So something weird's going on. People are seeing weird stuff. And now Swamp Thing's come to investigate, and there is a couple bonfires on the plantation land, and he sees that somebody has put salt around the graveyard that's on the grounds, and he's wondering why, which is pretty understandable. And now it's August 25th, and the plantation is basically good as new, and they're confused as to like, how did they do it so quickly? Like, what's going on? How did it, they turn it around and make it like look like new so quickly? And Richard is completely like, he's at a complete change in personality. All of the extras on the set, who are all black, are really like leaning into their roles. Let me see. Do I have any? We'll kind of see it over here, but like they're like, obviously they're having bonfires on the land. They're singing spirituals, and Billy says here, those people, they had good jobs and good prospects, but stick them out here, they revert to type. Director says, what are you talking about? Well, who are you talking about? Richard says, why, the colored, of course. Who else would I be talking about? And he says, the director says, Richard, don't you mean the extras? He says, yeah, the extras. What did I say? So something is amiss. It seems like our characters are embodying like the personalities of perhaps the original residents of the Jackson plantation. And we get now Billy, who is doing cocaine. He wasn't supposed to, but he's doing some cocaine just to deal with the stress, I guess. And Angela, kind of randomly, is now being very nice to him. She says, I know we've had our differences, but, next to Richard, you suddenly don't look so bad. She also says, I hate to see you become a slave to this white junk. You deserve better. And again, I think that's another Alan Moore trying to be cheeky and say something. The white junk being cocaine, but also the white junk being, I guess, owning slaves. I don't know. The metaphor is maybe there. You tell me if you think it's a successful one. But they part kind of on good terms. Like, she says that, we're going to start seeing a lot more of each other. Maybe I can help take your mind off of the stressful stuff. He says, thanks, Charlotte. I like that a lot. She says, that's Angela. So they keep getting all their names wrong. She tells them, stay away from the white lines. August 29th, and Abby's on set, and she bumps into somebody that she works with at Elysium Lawns, but she, what's her name here? Alice. Alice is completely like behaving as though she lives on the plantation. She's laying down this salt around the graveyard. And when she's pressed as to why, she says that I don't know. I just felt like it was something I ought to do. And she recommends, getting out of the sun. It's going to be dark soon. Going to be real dark soon. Something so a little bit ominous. So I'm thinking Abby. They convene later and they agree something weird is going on at that plantation. Let's go head over there and check it out. Meanwhile, we're back at the plantation. The bonfires are going on, and Richard is now composing himself the way he walks like an old plantation owner. And he asks for where Angela is. The director says, she went inside with Billy, but look, I'm losing control of the set here. What's going on? No one's listening. No one's listening to me. And Richard snaps his fingers and calls a couple of the extras over to him, and says that they need to come with him. As they're walking away, this is a kind of a weird sequence. First of all, this panel here, I find very confusing because I thought that this was somebody being slapped at first, but this is Richard because the director has a little mustache. This guy doesn't have a little mustache. And I don't know, there's no reason why Richard would be getting slapped here. So I don't know what this panel is saying, what this image, and the hand is just in a weird spot. And he leaves the director behind, screaming after him. And yet, we're going to see he kind of shows up in a really random spot on the next page. Richard walks in on Angela and Billy, who are calling each other Charlotte and William, on the couch, getting awfully cozy, and then the dialogue switches over to over here. That opening dialogue of Charlotte, you are tainted, you are repulsive to me. Do you understand? Repulsive, and it follows that through the end of the issue. Meanwhile, Swamp Thing and Abby have arrived. They see that pandemonium has broken out inside the house. Richard has attacked Angela. She's calling him Wesley. He's saying again those lines in the beginning. You have fouled the name of Roberta Land, and then we get this moment where it kind of breaks, and Angela is going to the director, Mr. Linder, saying, "What's going on?" And I don't know where he came from because again we left him behind here, and when we come back here, Richard is being flanked by the two extras that he's told to come with him. So I don't know where he came from. He's now suddenly, I guess, standing right next to Angela. And then on the next page, when we continue, he's gone again. He's not with them when they go down into the basement. And again, to remind you what that dialogue is, the owner of the plantation, Wesley Jackson, orders that this slave who's been caught with Charlotte to be tied to the post and flayed. So they bring him downstairs and they tie him to the post, put a blindfold on him, and we go back to a black panel. We close on a black panel the way we opened with one, and we have "Shall we begin?" That's where the issue ends. Next up, Strange Fruit. So yeah, interesting issue. Racism, always a difficult topic to write about. I'm curious how you guys feel it was handled here. It's obviously not done. The story continues in the next issue where we get the conclusion. But I think it was handled pretty interestingly by Moore. I don't think that there was anything overtly like cringy here. I think maybe some of his parallels require a little bit of an imagination, but again, that's just reading. That's just that's art. You just kind of have to take that when it comes. So let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Thank you for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.